What's up, nerds, and welcome to the Nerd History Podcast, a proud part of the Love Thy Nerd Podcast Network, and your home for celebrating the nostalgia that shaped nerd culture. Today, I'm Radio Matt, the Director of Content and Resources for Love Thy Nerd, and with me today is someone who should make like a tree and get out of here. Deidra.
That's so rude.
We just released our Nerd History mini-doc, and now we're here to discuss one of the greatest movies of all time, Back to the Future. So set your flux capacitors to fluxing, and let's get back in time.
Okay.
Opening scene. Garage full of clocks. Rube Goldberg-like mechanical machine, burning toast, pouring coffee into a coffee dispenser with no pot. A can opener automatically opening a dog food can and dumping dog food into a bowl already overflowing with old dog food.
Yeah, that part was gross.
And a teenager walking in looking for someone who is, by all accounts, his only friend. We meet no other friends of his.
That's true.
Just a girlfriend.
Girlfriend,
That's
yeah.
it. No, like, buddy.
Right.
His buddy is an old mad scientist. Even across all three movies, we are never told how they meet. What?
Am I allowed to say a theory?
Sure. We're going to talk about some other theories, but yeah, go ahead.
I mean, it's obvious. He went back in time and met him, and the doc knows him from that, and so he made sure to befriend him. It's a paradox.
It is a paradox.
Duh.
And you're right. But still, according to the movie, he's not a family friend.
Right.
He's not beloved in town.
Right.
He's seen as trouble. Does it take away anything from the films that we don't know the backstory, really, of how they met? Because today, I don't think we could get away with that.
Right. I've never thought about it.
Exactly. I feel like we could get away with it today. And people just aren't trying. People
Give
think
us some
that
mystery
everyone
that we don't know.
has to have all the answers, right?
Yeah.
No. So there are actually other official pieces of Back to the Future media that have explained a bit about how they met and how, despite being close with the doc, he never noticed the doc building a time machine.
It's true.
Like, it wasn't like he couldn't get into the lab, knew where the key was under the mat.
Right.
So the blanks were filled in this way. According to the comic book series, Doc bought the last amplifier tube at a local music shop or whatever.
Okay.
Marty needed it and saw Doc buy it, snuck into Doc's lab to try and steal it. Doc had a security system that was all puzzles of some sort, and Marty managed to get through all of them. And Doc was so impressed that he offered Marty a job as lab assistant.
Okay.
That's how the comic books
He's his
explain
lab
it.
assistant.
It's a lab assistant.
Okay.
Which that does make sense. Lab assistant. That makes sense.
But then he didn't assist him on the time machine.
But he didn't assist him on the time machine. According to the video game from Telltale Games, which this video game kind of serves as a part 4 to the series, and we'll talk about that in a minute.
Okay.
Implies that Marty didn't know about the time machine because Doc was building it in a secret second lab that he had.
He's like, you can know these secrets, but you ain't knowing this secret.
Can't know all the secrets. I mean, I can see that, though, storyline wise, because he didn't want to get Marty involved because he knew he was going to have to steal plutonium.
Right.
Up until the point where, all right, well, now I have to actually do the experiment. And so now I have to let him in on all the information. And get chased by terrorists.
Yeah.
But you can't talk about Back to the Future without talking about the DeLorean. From its gull-wing doors to its reputation as a mechanical nightmare. It's iconic.
It is.
How do you think the car flaws and all, helped shape the identity of the film?
I think it was like it is part of the film. It's like the Batmobile. I mean,
I feel like the car itself is more the main character than Marty and Doc. Like it talked about in the documentary that like originally it was going to be like a refrigerator.
Right. They didn't want kids.
But even if you think about, I mean, if you think about that, you think about how any of the other things it could be, even if it was another vehicle, even if it was the cool freaking time train at the end of that, if we started the series off with anything else, I feel like it would either feel too science fiction or not science fiction enough. I feel like turning what was already a futuristic looking car and still manages to look like a futuristic car even today.
It does. It's the doors.
Yeah. Turning that into the time machine just seemed to work so well. Not over the top, but not understated either. It's a good mix of both.
And they get to make the joke. He built a time machine.
Out of a DeLorean?
Yeah.
Why not do it with style? I really think the DeLorean really sells the good mixture between science fiction and like teen comedy that we had in the 80s.
Yeah.
Because those were the big deal. The teen comedy, the Ferris Bueller's, the Breakfast Clubs, those were the big teen movies. This was the big teen movie that was also a sci-fi movie. And it was sci-fi light. Like they had a couple scenes where they got a little technical, but even then it was played off as that's because Doc's a mad scientist. He's going to sound like that all the time that he talks.
Right.
And I think they did it really, really well. But even then, they still presented a form of time travel that made sense, but was coherent enough that audiences could understand it pretty quickly. It's beautiful.
Yeah, it's true. You don't feel like you have to be smart enough to understand the science of the time machine,
right?
In the movie,
right? It's just not that difficult. I mean, they put it into a kid's book that we bought recently,
right?
And none of our little kids are like, "Yeah, that doesn't make any sense." I'm like, okay, yeah,
sure,
yeah. Sure. Let's get philosophical for a second since we're talking about the time travel aspect.
Okay.
How does the movie play with ideas of fate versus free will? Is Marty actually changing his future or just playing into some kind of timeline that was always meant to happen?
Ooh. I think he changed it.
Yeah. When we get to the movies that, like, they go back in time and you come back and, like, nothing's changed. It's like, well, then that tells you that they had to do that. Like, in order to get to where you already were, that timeline was dependent on you going back in time to make that happen. But it was always going to happen. There's nothing you could have changed it.
I see.
But in this movie, we see he did change time. Because he comes back and things are slightly different. And we don't know how different. But that's kind of like the two different main versions of time travel that we see in movies, is whether or not this was always going to happen or whether or not you can actually change the future. The future isn't written. It's kind of like Looper. Like, you remember Looper with Jason Gordon-Levitt and Bruce Willis?
I think so.
Where like assassins are sent from the future back to the past to take somebody out. And then he's like taking out himself.
Yeah.
And it's all about that. Like, the way that was played out is like, all of this already happened. Or this was always supposed to happen. There's no way to change it. And then they figured out a way to change it. But then even then at the end of the movie, it was like, but no, this was always going to happen this way.
Oh.
Like, there's just, there was really no change. It's like, there's no actual change happening. The other kind of unfun time travel is like, well, because you went back in time and changed this, then you never actually got to the point where you went back in time. And so nothing ever happened and it just resets. And that wouldn't be very fun.
Right. Yeah.
But we get alternate timelines, and we see that more clearly in the second movie, which we'll talk about in the future.
Or in the past.
But but yeah, I think this movie really plays heavily on the, your choices matter, your choices change things.
Yeah.
And I liked that it didn't just fall into place, that they had to fight to get to some semblance of the way it was. Like they couldn't just go back in time further and fix it, stop him from ever going back in time.
Right. And he got to make his life a little better.
Temporarily. And then he made it a lot worse later.
But by the end, it's better.
And then by the end, it's fine. What do you think? Why do you think the nostalgia was such a powerful tool in the movie? Like, it came out in 1985, but the bulk of the movie was set in 1955. Like, I think that it really appealed to parents as well as teenagers. Teenagers because it was a teen comedy, but parents because they were watching their childhood on the screens.
Had they done that a lot with movies? Had they set movies in the 50s?
I'm sure there had been movies set in the 50s, but not with the fish out of water aspect.
Yeah, that's true.
Of a kid
From now,
a kid their age going back.
Right.
Yeah.
That's true.
That would be an interesting dynamic for that not being today. There's 1,000 movies like that.
Right.
But it was a brand new trope really back then. Wasn't the first time travel movie, but the first one that was like that. Like it was a family kind of. They even call it a family friendly film, but there's a lot of cussing in that movie. I just watched it again in preparation of this. I'm like, man, they cuss a lot.
Yeah. I grew up watching the made-for-TV one.
We all did. We all did. That is a uniquely our generation problem.
Right?
Because we're like, man, all these movies were so much worse than we thought because we all taped them off the TV. That's how we watched them. I lost a lot of Gen Alpha listeners right then. Taped them off the TV? What? Hang up the phone. Hang up? But I think today we are also in a unique position with the movie because now we're looking back at the movie as 1985 being, in our relative childhood spans, and our kids are seeing this is what our parents were like, and then this is what their parents were like, our grandparents were like, I'm not sure how much longer it holds up. You know what I mean? Because I want to say it has staying power because it's lasted this long.
Right.
But I wonder if in a couple more generations, it's too old, too far gone for any nostalgia.
That's why we all, with children, we need to have them watch this movie when it's appropriate for them. Have them watch this movie in their childhood so that they remember it and have nostalgia of watching the movie in their childhood for their children, and just keep going.
It's that weird movie that we watched with our parents.
Yeah, I mean, I just watched with our kids The Parent Trap, the old one.
The old one?
The old one.
I loved that when I was a kid.
Yeah. See? And why did I want to watch it? Because I watched it as a kid. It was not in my generation.
But I don't want to watch it anymore.
What? It's so good.
I don't even want to watch the
Lindsay Lohan one?
Lindsay Lohan one.
Well, nobody wants to watch that one.
A lot of people do. That was her big breakout roles.
Oh.
She was both. Now I remember actually the original one, that was what my babysitter would bring over to watch, and I would always ask her to bring it again and watch it the next time.
Wow.
Yeah. I watched that a lot when I was a kid.
Wow.
I loved it. Now for the big debate.
Okay.
Should there be a fourth film?
No. I feel like you know where I stand on ruining things. Don't give me a second stupid Frasier where he isn't in love with that lady anymore.
The new Frasier is pretty good.
No,
pretty good.
It ruined him. He is going to be single.
They said the
for
same
the rest
thing.
of his life.
They said the same thing when they started Frasier, and he wasn't married to Lilith anymore. And they barely had Lilith or Freddie in the show, and they said the same. They're ruining Frasier as a character. Mm-hmm. And then it turned out to be one of the greatest sitcoms of all time, and it ran 11 seasons. Anyway.
Absolutely not.
Bob Gale says no way. He's always been very adamant. Even long before reboots and revivals were a common thing. Mm-hmm. He said, no, we're done. No more. And there's been teases for
forever,
decades. I remember there was an episode of Spin City, which starred Michael J. Fox for most of it, where Christopher Lloyd was a guest star for an episode, and they called it Back to the Future 4. That was the episode's title.
See, they already made it.
Right. But like the question is there more stuff that could have been touched on?
Well, sure.
Yeah. And they kind of did it in a video game.
Oh, okay.
So with the full approval of Bob Gale, Telltale Games created Back to the Future, the video game. Christopher Lloyd came back to voice Doc, which was cool. Mm-hmm. Michael J. Fox did not voice Marty. But having any of them back was pretty cool. Mm-hmm. In the video game, across 5 cinematic episodes. So it's like there's games, but it's also mostly a story that you're telling as you go through it. The game picks up where the film left off about 6 months later. Okay. Mm-hmm. And it weaves through new adventures through the 30s, back to the 80s, back to the 19th century, a dystopian version of the 80s where Doc is a tyrannical leader of like a walled off Hill Valley kind of cult / slave plantation thing with all the citizens bowing before Air Brown.
Okay. All right.
They meet gangster tannins. They meet more time travel dilemmas, some weird villain that we've never met before, I think named Edna or something like that. Like they go through all these different possibilities. Mm-hmm. And while it's fun as a game, I don't think any of this would have worked as a movie. I think if they tried to tack on a 4th movie, it'd be like we're beating a dead horse now. Because we got the recent past, we got the cool futuristic time, we got the way back Western period. We don't really need Knights of the Round Table. We don't need dystopian future where Doc is a
right.
I
think that would kind of ruin
tyrant.
Doc's character too. That
It would.
You're putting out there that has the potential to be this evil overlord.
Right. And I don't recall exactly the story with his wife. I think Clara might have been kidnapped. I don't remember there was like a whole reason how Doc got lost in time.
Okay.
I can't remember. I watched through the whole thing on YouTube a billion years ago, and now I don't remember everything. But basically, it was like, okay, this is fun as this.
So
it wouldn't be good as a movie.
As you're describing the game, I'm picturing like the little pixelated characters. Is that how it was?
No. This is a 3D, fully rendered 3D animated kind of thing. It came out in the last decade or so.
Okay.
I think it's the same game company that came out with Strong Bad's cool game for attractive people. That was also like an episodic thing that you played through.
Okay.
At the end of the arc, everything is put right, and a trio of future Martys arrive at the same time to tease further time hopping adventures. But I don't think that ever happened. And I don't think there's any plans to make any more games. So it scratched the itch, I guess, for people that wanted more, and probably also answered the question of, could we do more? Probably not. As a movie, no, probably not. As a comic book, yeah.
Yeah.
And they had a pretty successful comic book run. It didn't take off like they wanted it to. Reading online when there were people talking about it, they had the idea of like having 3 different comic books going at the same time, all in alternate realities.
Oh.
And every now and then having them cross over.
That'd be cool.
Like, that'd be really neat.
Yeah.
Right? A whole like cinematic universe of Back to the Futures and comics. I'm like, oh, that makes me really want it to happen.
Right.
All right, final question. This all started with a yearbook and Bob Gale wondering if he'd be friends with his dad in high school.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think you'd be friends with your parents in high school?
Ooh, that's a good question.
And if not, is it because they're cooler than you or not as cool as you?
Oh.
Let's put down our parents right now.
Well, for my mom's senior year, she was already married.
That's true.
So
My
I
mom
feel
as
like,
well. I'm pretty sure.
Wow. I feel like she would have
No.
been cool because,
But not to my dad.
like, you know, what are they going to do? Call your parents? You know, like,
I have seen pictures of my mom from back then, and it is very similar to the Back to the Future story.
yeah.
Like, I'm not sure I've even ever shown you the high school pictures that my mom had.
I've seen like the pictures of her wedding with your dad.
Yeah, it's
And
still
I
before
think
that.
I think that's probably the earliest.
Okay. Yeah, they
I've
had
seen,
her and her sister, like portraits taken, I think when she was 16, hanging in my grandmother's house. And she looks like a totally different person. Like very thin. I would say she would have been very attractive at that time. My dad also very thin, very like military-esque almost looking back then. And I'm like, these are 2 very attractive people. What happened to them? Just kidding. But I was never that attractive. And I'm like, well, why don't I get either of these genes?
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't think I would have been able to be in their crowd. Is what I was thinking. I think they would have been too popular for me.
Too good for you, huh? Too good for their son. Yeah.
But your dad.
I mean, you know, you look at he had the
Crazy
big
red
hair.
red afro-esque looking thing.
Yeah. Yeah, he did
Scraggly
have reddish
beard.
hair with the big afro, but that was the style.
Yeah,
So I feel like he was
maybe.
stylish.
Has your dad ever talked about it? Like, was he cool in high school?
You know, I have never asked.
Never had that conversation?
I feel like my mom probably wasn't considered a cool person. Probably, I just know that there were 13 kids in her family and they ran a small farm. And so they probably didn't, couldn't afford the extra things. So I would imagine
true.
It'd be hard to be with the in crowd if you can't do
The
that.
farm girl. That's what she would have been. Yeah,
Yeah, I mean, that's how they met, was on her parents' farm. So
that's true.
I feel like they would have fit in with rural America.
Rural America. Are you saying real America? I'm friendly with rural America.
Yeah.
But do you think you'd be friends with them?
I don't know.
You had a lot of weird friends in high school, but that was mostly because of me.
Yeah, and then you left me my senior year and I was just by myself.
We already went through this last time, didn't we?
I'm going to continue bringing it up.
Didn't we go over this in the Napoleon Dynamite
Had
episode?
to do senior year all by myself. Probably because I'm sure I was talking about how much I hated high school and wanted to get out of it. Yeah.
That's exactly what I was. And I said, I loved high school. And then you're like, well, maybe I'm just thinking of senior year where you left me and all my friends were your friends and they were all gone too. Yeah.
I'm not bitter about it.
It seems like you are. I feel like you've never brought it up.
I've gotten
and then
over
you
it.
brought it up twice in the last two episodes.
I've moved on. Okay. Why can't you?
That is going to do it for today's show. Subscribe to the Nerd History Podcast via our YouTube channel, youtube.com/@nerdhistoryltn, excuse me, or on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, etc. for the audio version. You can find us at lovethynerd.com/nerdhistorypod. We also have our daily Today in Nerd History video short and article that comes out every day at lovethynerd.com/nerdhistory with photos, nerdy facts, all kinds of fun. Deidra and I will be back in a couple weeks to talk about my favorite DC superhero.
Ooh.
Beware his power. But until then, I'm Radio Matt.
And I'm Deidra.
And remember, in the past, present, and future,
Jesus loves you, nerds.
That felt really good for this one.
Yeah. How fitting. It's almost like you're a fan of the show.
It's almost like we modeled the whole design of the show after this movie and then
never
never
talked
covered
about
it.